Welcome, everybody, to SteeleWatching, the podcast for Remington Steele fans. I am Eric, and I am one of your hosts.
And I am Sara, and I'm stuck in another heat wave. And also host.
And I know you paused because you thought I was going to say something funny, but no.
I did.
No,
I
I'm
was
not going to say
waiting.
any funny this week. No.
I was waiting.
Yeah, well, I'm in too much pain.
Oh, no, that's not good. That's not good.
That's been one of those weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was doing something the other day, and you get old and things aren't as flexible as they're supposed to be or as they used to be, and
Don't you hate
discover
that
this.
now all you have to do is like move wrong and something hurts? Like it's not fun.
Yeah, really? No, it's not. Anyway, this episode is all about Maltese Steele. We're back in Europe.
Yeah.
It's part of that 1984 trip because of the Olympics that
Gotta
made a mess
spend
of
that budget money.
Oh, yes. Anyway, the episode first aired on October 16th, 1984. Try saying that 3 times really fast. It was written by John Worth and directed by Seymour! Robbie. Seymour!
We do love Seymour.
And I went with the... Oh, yes. I went with the TV guide listing this time. While searching for a missing body on the island of Malta, Laura and Steele acquire a seemingly insignificant piece of brass that could be the key to a legendary treasure. Or it could get them killed.
I picked the first one.
Yeah. So, I did have a slight issue with this as I was reading it. And I know in the episode they say that the piece is made out of brass, but I tell you, looking at that looks more like marble or limestone to me, but what do I know?
Yeah, it doesn't really look much like brass, but yeah.
No. And usually when brass gets old, it gets a greenish tint to it as it corrodes in sarcasm quotes there, because that's not called corrosion anymore. Now it's called patina, and we can charge 10 times as much for it. But yeah, I didn't see any green on it. So anyway, also as a little side note, Doris Roberts earned an Emmy nomination for this season using clips from this episode. And both of these things, the TV guide synopsis and this note, are courtesy of Judith Moose's book, Steele Loved After All These Years, which we got to mention every episode. I think it's contractually obligated, but anyway.
Yeah, for sure.
So the episode starts. We see a historical we see a sign outside that says Historical Society. It doesn't tell us where. But, of course, given that the rest of the episode happens in Malta, we know it's in Malta. An alarm goes off. A young man is exiting one of the rooms into a corridor, and then he runs out of the building with a security officer in pursuit. The young man runs through a courtyard and down sidewalks, beside outdoor cafes, and down streets and down alleys, and he finally runs up the stairs of an old apartment building, which Steele later calls a hotel. To me, it looked more like an apartment.
Yeah, I thought it was an apartment too. But
yeah, but this could be one of those cultural things, because to me, I see an apartment building, maybe in Malta, in certain portions of Europe. This is what hotel rooms look like. I don't know.
Yeah, that's true.
Maybe they're doing the Airbnb before it was a thing.
Yeah, it was kind of surprising when like in Scotland, for example, a lot of their hotels. You know how here, if you get a hotel room, you pay for however many beds you want. Like, it doesn't matter how many people are in the room as long as they fit the amount of beds. Obviously, you're not supposed to have more people than there are beds, but Comic-Con, we we pack people to the ceiling. But like in Scotland, they'll charge you per bed or per person. Sorry. So like if you have 2 people staying there and only 1 bed, it doesn't matter. You're still being charged for 2 people. Like, yeah. So, I mean, stuff works differently in Europe. So you could be right.
Yeah. So anyway, up in the apartment, we see a falcon in a cage. The young man attaches a part of a Maltese falcon to its or part of a Maltese falcon. Listen to me. Part of a Maltese cross to its leg. The cross is missing one of the 4 quadrilaterals that make up the cross. Did you do any lookup on the Maltese cross, or do you already know all about it?
I didn't. I admit that I did not do my research here, but I did have one quick question because this has to be said, and if it's not said, someone's going to yell at me. So,
oh no,
not to get all Monty Python here, but would a falcon be able to carry something that heavy?
I don't know. Some birds are pretty strong.
Well, have you seen Monty Python and the Holy Grail?
No.
Okay, so there is a scene at the very beginning of the film. King Arthur is riding along, and you can hear like the hoof, like the beats. So the hoof beats of his horse. Wow, I can talk. And when you look at it, there's no horse. They're actually just running, and he's got a servant running behind him, knocking coconuts together to make the sound of a horse, right? And that was done
yes.
Apparently for 2 reasons. 1, because they didn't have the budget for the horses, and 2, it was funny, right? But when they get up to the castle to ask where they can find people for their quest or what have you, the guard at the top of the castle asks where they got the coconuts, and he says, "We found them." And he says, "Found them in Mercia, the coconut's tropical." And then the king says, "What do you mean?" And then the first soldier says, "Well, this is a temperate zone." And then King Arthur says, "The swallow may fly south with the sun or the house martin, or the plover may seek warmer climates in winter, yet these are not strangers to our land." And then the first soldier says, "Are you suggesting coconuts migrate?" And King Arthur says, "No, not at all. They could be carried." And then the soldier says, "Swallow carrying a coconut?" He said, "It could go by the husk." And then he says, "It's not a question of where he grips it. It's a simple question of weight ratios. A 5-ounce bird could not carry a 1-pound coconut." And so now I find myself wondering what the velocity, wind speed velocity is of an unladen falcon, and whether or not he could carry the horse. And I realized that was more than I needed to put in there, but still.
I don't know. It does seem like maybe a little bit of a stretch, but maybe it's not as heavy as it appears to be, just from the size. How about if we go with that?
Did you look into the Maltese cross?
I did.
Okay.
It's a heraldic cross, chiefly associated with the Knights of Hospitaller.
Oh, the hospital. Okay. Yep.
Order of St. John, now the Sovereign Military Order of Malta, and by extension with the island of Malta, but has also come to be used by a wide variety of entities since the early modern period, notably the Order of St. Stephen, the city of Amalfi, and the Polish Order of the White Eagle, not to mention the Prussian Order Pour de la Moray, and the Bavarian Military Merit Order. It's also called the Cross of St. John, with each of the 8 points of the cross symbolizing one of the Beatitudes according to the Gospel, and one of the 8 foundational virtues of the order, those being loyalty, piety, honesty, courage, honor, glory, contempt for death, solidarity towards the poor and sick, and respect for the church, one of the 8 obligations. Yes, and also of the 8 obligations or aspirations of the knights, which is to live in faith, live in truth, have faith, to repent one's sins, to give proof of humility, to love justice, to be merciful, to be sincere and wholehearted, and to endure persecution. So, yeah, each one of those points on the cross, according to the Cross of St. John, represents multiple things. So
yeah, I actually
a very busy cross.
Yeah, I took a Crusades course when I was in university. I have a history degree, and the Hospitallers were a military religious order that were charged with the care and defense of the Holy Land. So they fought in the Crusades, and I remember like doing some research on them for an essay that I was writing at one point. So yeah, that rings a bell in terms of who they are, but I didn't know the other stuff, so that's kind of cool.
Yeah. So anyway, the young man takes the bird out onto the balcony with the cross attached to its leg, and he releases it just as the security guard enters the apartment. Now, I had a question, and maybe this is a a cultural thing. What is a security guard doing pursuing anybody beyond the confines of the society's property? I mean, I can't imagine he has any authority to do so. And even if he catches the guy, what can he do with him?
What?
He's not a cop.
Did he have a weapon? I don't remember whether he even had a weapon. Because, like, if the other guy has a weapon,
I don't know if he did or not.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of strange too, but they say later on he got let go because they suspected him of being involved. So maybe he ran after the guy because he thought, oh crap, if I don't catch this guy, they're gonna blame me.
Yeah, it just seems like one of those things where that might have actually been his undoing, because it's like the security people at Walmart. They're really more for show than anything else.
Yeah.
And what little authority they do actually have is limited to the Walmart property.
Yeah.
So it's not like this guy here would have any authority at a hotel or an apartment down the street. He's there as security for the historical society. So
yeah, when I used to work at a department store, we even if we suspected that a person was shoplifting, the only people that could intervene were the loss prevention officers. And even then, they were told, like, don't chase somebody off the property, like, just get a description, call the police, whatever. Although a friend of mine, I'll never forget this, he was cash supervisor on duty one day, and somebody stole something, and he yelled at the guy to stop, and the guy made a run for it. So my friend left the store, jumped on his bike, chased the guy down on his bike, and then jumped on top of him like it was out of some sort of movie. All for, I don't know, it was an action figure or something the guy stole. But the manager basically said to him, we appreciate your dedication. Don't ever do that again. So yeah, he thought he was being a hero, but not so much.
Yeah. My son-in-law used to work security for, well, it's called Fred Meyer up here. It's a Kroger brand store. And yeah, they were very, very limited in what they could do. And after a certain point, can't do anything because your authority has ended. So yeah, I think this guy, the security guard, kind of blew it in multiple ways, but one of them was running beyond his authority.
He's very dedicated to history, though. You got to respect that.
Okay, fine. So, back at the apartment, the young man steps into the apartment after having released the bird, and the security guard has come in, and the young man says, "You'll never take me alive!" And then we see him place something between his teeth, and he bites, and he falls to the floor with his mouth foaming. And security guard looks on in shock, rushes over to the young man, looks at his mouth, and runs out onto the balcony to see the bird as it continues to fly away.
So melodramatic.
Yes. And then he rushes back into the room, looks momentarily at the young man, and then rushes out of the apartment. And then we see a woman's legs step out from behind a curtain. And the young man opens his eyes. He smiles and gets up, wipes his face, and tells the woman, "Great trick, huh? The guy thought I was dead." And then the woman steps forward. She pulls a gun out of her purse, points it at the young man, and says, "The guy was right." Pulls the trigger, and "You are dead." Yeah. Okay, I can already see where this is going. Next, we see a middle-aged man with a goatee and a mustache. His eyes are closed, and he's lying in a coffin. And we hear a voice say, "That is not my nephew." And Laura and Steele are standing by the coffin with a Mr. Wallace Carlyle, the man who spoke. And Laura, apparently not realizing that she's insulting the man's intelligence, says, "Well, are you sure that's not your nephew?" Come on, Laura. Come on. Anyway, the man hands Laura a photo, and Laura and Steele look at it and then look at the man at the coffin, and it's not the same. And Laura asks Carlyle, "Well, what is it you want us to do?" And frustrated, Carlyle says that he wants them to find out what's going on. He's been on the phone for a week, but no one in Malta will give him a straight answer. He indicates a small packet of papers in his hand, saying,
"This is kind of, sorry, this is kind of a silly question. What do you want us to do?" I mean, I would think that if I were a detective, I could intuit that I am being hired to find out what really happened.
That would be a fairly good assumption. Yeah. I would have thought so too. In fact, I almost put that in my notes, but I left it out because I thought, well, okay, maybe there was some genuine question, but you're right. I mean, I mean, you may not understand immediately the full scope of what he's wanting to be done, but you would at least presume that he wants you to find his nephew's body.
There's been a mix-up. The corpse in front of you is not the corpse that is supposed to be there, so therefore you want to find out where the corpse is. Like it's
Yeah, exactly. And so the man hands them the papers saying that these papers say that that's my nephew, but I know that's not my nephew. And so Laura asks what it is that makes Carlisle think that his nephew is even dead. And Steele points out that, well, maybe the nephew just flaked out and could be gallivanting around the Mediterranean. And Carlisle says, well, okay, yeah, maybe. But if that's true, I'd like to know. Oh, I do have it in my notes. It says right here, it seems a bit ridiculous that Laura and Steele made it necessary for Carlisle to even have to say this. I mean, after all, if a dead body shows up on your doorstep, and the authorities are claiming it's your nephew and you don't know where your nephew is, but you know good and well that the body in the box isn't your nephew, and everyone you talk to either won't give you a straight answer or they're trying to convince you that you're an idiot and that it is your nephew in the box, even though you know it isn't. Wouldn't it be obvious that you want someone to find out what's going on, to find out where your nephew really is?
That's exactly.
You got there before me. So
that's exactly it. And it's funny that Steele says that it could be that he could just be gallivanting around the Mediterranean, because even if that's the case, you'd want to know why you've got. Plus, if you're suddenly put in custody of this dead body that is not the person that you are related to, I would want to know where that body is going, because I wouldn't want to bury it. Like I wouldn't want that to be my job. I'd be like, okay, if my nephew's still alive, that kind of be nice to know. Although I don't know about you, but did this actor strike you as a little bit, I don't know, there was something really odd about his face, and I don't not dislikable necessarily, but I don't know, off-putting.
He's got a unique face.
Yeah.
He's got a unique face, that's for sure. I'm going to guess he normally plays, like either a bad guy or something like that. Because, his face is, it's a little unique. We'll put it that way. Yeah. So anyway, in reference to Steele's comment about the nephew gallivanting around the Mediterranean, Carlisle admits that ever since the boy's parents died, his nephew's been a A1 pain in the butt and has gotten arrested for various crimes and kicked out of various countries. Oh, boy, that sounds like a real good kid. And that when the nephew said that he wanted to go live in Malta, it seemed like a good idea, since it was, as he puts it, in the middle of nowhere. Is Malta in the middle of nowhere? I didn't think it was, but anyway.
I think that might not do so well for Maltese tourism.
No, but again, I apologize to anybody from Malta. We didn't say it. Yeah. The character did.
It wasn't us.
Anyway, he says all he wants is the body returned to Malta and his nephew brought back where he can't cause any more trouble, regardless of whether his nephew is dead or alive. So then we have a series of transition shots taking us from LA to Malta via Pan Am. And for anyone who isn't old enough to know, Pan American World Airways, colloquially known as Pan Am, was the principal and largest international air carrier and unofficial overseas flag carrier of the United States for much of the 20th century. From its founding in 1927 until its dissolution in 1991, Pan Am led the industry in innovation and epitomized the luxury and glamour of intercontinental travel. In the 30s, they revolutionized international travel by introducing their flying.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Just curious. I'm sure you're going to get there, but do you know why they're no longer around?
Well, yeah. What happened was, let me get to there. In the 1930s, they revolutionized international travel by introducing their flying clipper cruises using flying boat aircraft, and they were the only aircraft American aircraft at the time capable of intercontinental travel. And in the year of 1970 alone, it flew 11 million passengers to 86 countries with destinations in every continent except Antarctica. Unfortunately, beginning in the mid-1970s, Pan Am began facing a series of challenges, both internal and external, along with rising competition from the deregulation of the airline industry in 1978. And eventually they sold off all their assets and declared bankruptcy and was gone. But yeah, if you're watching old TV shows or old movies, you'll see their airplanes all over the place in old movies and TV shows because they were so.
Because I have seen the planes and stuff in movies and whatnot, and I just assumed. I didn't realize they'd gone out of business. I just assumed they were an American airline that I've never flown with because I either fly with a Canadian airline or, a Scottish if I'm going to the UK, but I didn't realize they were gone. So yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. Deregulation of the airline industry really killed a lot of the airlines and even new airlines that have come into existence since deregulation have not necessarily fared very well. That's one of the interesting dichotomies about regulation of industry in the U.S. is that a lot of people think that the people who run these businesses don't like government regulation and being regulated as to how much they can charge and things like that. But in fact, most of the time, regulated industries actually love it because they're guaranteed a profit.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So, they're not making enough money as an industry. They go to the government body that oversees them and they say, "We need more money, please."
Actually,
more, please.
WestJet, one of our airlines, is currently engaging in a strike, and I don't know exactly what the situation is between the airline and their employer and whatnot, but I just know a lot of friends who have had flights canceled and or are trying to rebook upcoming flights because they know that their flights are going to be canceled. And there's a bit of a mess. Currently, I read a news story about a Canadian couple that were stranded in Jamaica, or might have been, I don't know, somewhere, but there's a hurricane on its way, Hurricane Beryl, and they're not able to get back. So they're just trying to batten down the hatches and wait it out. So yeah, that's one of our major airlines. WestJet and Air Canada are two biggies here. So we'll see what happens. But if you've got a flight with WestJet in the near future, you probably want to rebook it.
So anyway, after all the transition shots, we see that Steele and Laura are in Malta, and we see the unwanted coffin coming out of the airplane cargo hold, and that this is being observed afar by a yet as unidentified gentleman. Inside the airport, Laura, Remington, and Mildred are trying to get through the customs bag check, and the custom inspector orders, "Open, open, open." But Mildred seems to be in a mood to be disagreeable and doesn't want to open her bag for inspection.
Disagree with airline. Like, you do what you're told. You just do what you're told because they can make your life a living hell.
Well, I've got slightly farther down at the end of this. What was Mildred's problem? And what was the point of her arguing about it? Because baggage inspection, when you're coming into a country, going through customs, baggage inspection is standard.
Yeah.
It's been standard for decades.
The only time I got into it with a baggage handler / inspector was when we took Kira to visit her grandparents in Scotland when she was 5 months old. I was still nursing her. And so I had a whole bunch of breast milk that I had pumped and that we were keeping cool using ice packs. And going to Scotland, it was fine because you are guaranteed to be allowed to have formula, even though they have that no liquid policy. If you've got formula or breast milk, because you're feeding your baby, they can't stop you, right? But coming back from Scotland, they were fine with the milk, but they took exception to the ice packs and threw them out because the ice packs are gel and they freeze, and so therefore that's a liquid. And I tried to argue that it's technically in a solid state right now. It's not a liquid. They didn't seem to care about that little point of and we got back and forth, and I tried to explain, like, because they kept saying, well, you still have the milk, and I said, yeah, but it only lasts so long. And I had pumped it
Yeah, it's going to go bad.
all through the trip, right? So, like, I had days worth of milk that, if not consumed within a certain amount of time, was going to be worthless. And when they say don't cry over spilled milk, whoever said that was not nursing a 5-month-old. So, and then I finally sort of gave up, but Scott got in the security guard's face, and I was like, dude, we are not going to leave this country. You need to stop. So, yeah, I lost like 3 or 4 bags of breast milk because they wouldn't let me take the ice back.
Yeah. Well, TSA. You know who Adam Savage is, right?
Yeah,
Mythbusters.
yeah.
Yeah. He, and I may have mentioned this before, he was at some event in Seattle, Washington years ago. And he was introduced. He came out on stage, and he was talking and telling about the trip there, and he was commenting about how, when in Mythbusters they buy all kinds of weird stuff, and he said he's got this routine he normally goes through before going to an airport because some of the stuff that they buy is weird, and if he wants to make sure it's not in his pockets or anywhere with him, because he doesn't want anything that's going to cause a problem. And on this particular flight, he had forgotten that he had bought some things, and they were in his pocket, his jacket pocket. And he gets there, and so he's on stage, and he says, and so I've got these things, and he pulls out this container that's got these 2 like 18-inch razor blades in them. Oh, no. He says, what the F, TSA? And he holds them up. Yeah.
Well, this wasn't TSA. This was the Scottish security, but still, Scott was not impressed because they were fine with it in Canada. The ice packs were fine leaving Canada, but not leaving the UK.
Leaving Scotland, yeah. Sometimes you got to wonder about the rules and the application of them, and it's like, well, you can do B, but you can't do A, but B falls apart if you don't do A. Yeah. So anyway, yes, Mildred's in a mood to be disagreeable. She doesn't want to open her bag. She tries to argue with the inspector, who isn't in the mood for it. He grabs her bag from her hand, slams it down, and demands, "Open!" And after a slight scolding from Steele, she acquiesces, but the damage is already done. After she unzips her bag for inspection, the inspector begins grabbing the contents, pulling everything out, and throwing it all over the place. I've had that happen with Mildred protesting.
I've had that happen when we've crossed the border. There was one particular crossing when we went to Frankenmuth in Michigan where there was a really bad snowstorm headed our way, and we actually left a day early. And so we didn't really do much. We were there 2 days, but we didn't do any shopping or anything because the weather was terrible, and we wanted to get home ahead of the storm. And so as we were crossing back into Canada, when they asked how much we spent, I said, we didn't buy anything because we didn't. And they did not believe for a second that we went to the US for 2 days and did not purchase anything. So they basically took our car over to the side and ripped it apart. Like, they're throwing my underwear everywhere. It was like, and I have a theory that maybe Mildred didn't want her bag searched because maybe she's got like a stack of Charlotte Knight novels, or like she saved the transmissions from the Dark Prince, or maybe she's got some, items in there that she doesn't want Mr. Steele or Laura to see. Maybe she visited a shop, or maybe she went to the place Lord Marchmain went to. You never know. Like, Mildred's got her own life.
Yeah. My only incident with customs, I was driving back from BC. I'd picked up a load of paper. So I was driving semi-truck, and so I had 53-foot trailer loaded with these huge, huge rolls of paper. And for whatever, it's paper. What's the big deal, right? But they sealed it. They put a seal on the trailer so that they could make sure that it wasn't tampered with when it got to the destination in the U.S. So I'm coming back across the border, and the guy at customs wants to look inside. Well, I got the paper. I need to look inside and say, okay, fine. But it's sealed. So before you cut the seal, I need your name, because they're going to demand that information when I get down to the destination. And I've got to give them a name. It's going to be yours, not mine. And yeah, he looked at me for about a second, and he wasn't very nice when he told me to get out.
Yeah, I bet not.
So anyway, as Mildred's bag is being torn apart and thrown all over the place, we see the man who had been observing the disembarkment of the coffin, observing the disembowelment of Mildred's bag. Outside on the sidewalk, Steele and Laura and the coffin are waiting for Mildred. Laura asks why it was necessary to... Steele asks Laura why it was necessary to bring Mildred along on what he deems a benign, albeit macabre, mission. And, it's an appropriate question given Mildred's behavior so far.
Yeah, that's true. Well, and also the fact that the last time they went to Europe with Mildred, she spent, 200,000 francs or whatever at the casino. So.
Yeah. So I'm sure Steele's, keeping that in mind as well. Laura responds that Mildred can be a bureaucratic whirlwind, and in a place like this, that's a skill that likely will come in handy. And of course, Steele isn't impressed, which is, like I said, understandable under the circumstances. Mildred finally gets out of the terminal. Her bags are open, contents spilling them out as she carries them. And we have to call it a taxi, because technically it's a taxi. Comes racing up, and the driver asks if they want a ride. But it's a Mini, which wouldn't even accommodate the three of them.
No, it wouldn't.
Even if they didn't have any luggage and a friend in a pine box.
Well, this is the thing. I was watching this scene play out, and I thought, well, even if they had a regular-sized car, aside from a bus or a hearse, that's the only way they're going to transport that casket, unless, of course, as they eventually do find the horse and buggy. But I don't know what Steele was thinking waiting for a taxi. They were never going to get in a regular taxi with a coffin. So
I don't know that they were actually waiting for a taxi. I think they were waiting for Mildred, and the guy saw them there. They're at the airport. They're standing. They're not going anywhere. They must need a taxi.
Yeah.
Of course, he didn't notice the coffin. I guess, or either that, or he figured he'd strap it onto the top. Who knows? But yeah. So anyway, Steele declines the ride, and the driver leaves, highly offended at the snuff.
He's really offended by it. It's like, do you not see all their luggage plus the coffin?
Well, yeah, maybe he was an optimist. Maybe he figured he could get them all in. Although, if you looked really close, there were only 2 passenger seats in the back. There was no passenger seat up front. So, I mean, somebody was sitting on somebody's lap. Anyway, we cut to Steele and Laura in a horse-drawn cart. It's not even a wagon. It's just a cart being drawn by a horse. Steele's driving, the casket's in the back. The two discuss Mildred's handiwork. Laura says it was the only thing large enough to accommodate the coffin. Steele's annoyed that they didn't even get a driver with the cart, but Laura says, well, the guy that owned the wagon was superstitious about acting as a chauffeur to a coffin. And Steele comments that he hopes Mildred does a better job of getting them checked into a hotel than she did securing transportation.
Now, they need to remember this when they try to go on their fake honeymoon. Mildred, not great with securing accommodations or, other accoutrements when they're on vacation. It tends to go badly.
Well, I don't know. I don't
granted,
know.
their hotel's not bad, but
yeah, their hotel's not bad. The travel arrangements that she made, not so good. So anyway, during this conversation, Steele expresses his suspicion that Laura brought Mildred along as a buffer between the two of them. And Laura, who just can't resist poking the bear, pointedly comments about how they're in the balmy Mediterranean islands, caressed by breezes and alone except for an extra body or two. But that doesn't change things. Their relationship is strictly professional.
Yep.
And Steele gives out with a sour response. And as they're traveling the streets, the locals begin offering food and wine and other gifts to the bereaved, I'm sure,
quite funny.
who don't And Laura and Steele, they don't seem to pick up on it, but I'm sure that that's what it is. The locals think that this is a funeral procession.
Yeah, I'm sure it's probably a
Right?
custom like that they have to, if you see
Yeah.
it's similar to here, if you see a funeral procession and you're in your car, you pull over so the whole procession can pass. Obviously, you don't want to get in the middle of it. Yeah, I it's kind of surprising they don't clue in that it's the coffin. That's why they're giving them presents.
Yeah. And anyway, in the background, we see a man on the street selling crosses similar to what we saw earlier being secured to the Falcon in the opening scene, and which, like that one, are missing a quadrilateral. Next, we are at the Borg-Ward Funeral Home. An older man, Mr. Borg-Ward, who is the owner of the funeral home, indignantly declares, "We never make mistakes." And Laura, just as... Never? Yeah. Laura just as indignantly tells him that the body that they have is not Benjamin Carlisle. Steele shows the old man a photo of Carlisle and asks him if he recognizes the photo. And Borg-Ward states, well, in his business, it does not pay to become too familiar with the clientele. Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, that's fair.
Steele suggests that the old man look at the corpse, thinking it might refresh his memory. And I'm not sure how much more helpful a photo would be than not, because, I mean, if you're a mortician, I guess it might be different. But, I mean, you look at a photo of somebody in a dead version at somebody, are they necessarily going to be identical looking? I don't know.
Well, if they've been properly in, I know this because I had a relative who used to do like the makeup and whatnot for people in funeral homes. If they've been properly embalmed and they've had, like, sometimes you have to reconstruct their faces and things like that. And not even necessarily because of an accident. Can sometimes be because of illness, or if the person lost a lot of weight before they died or whatever. So sometimes they have to, like, put collagen in the skin and, like, do a whole bunch of things to make the face look like it did when they were alive. And usually they do that working from a photo because, people want to see their loved ones look, ironically, as healthy as possible in the coffin. So
I want them to look alive.
Yeah, exactly. It depends on how, whether or not he had a good picture to work with, I guess, ahead of time, and how well the body was preserved with the makeup and whatnot. So I guess if he had been embalmed and all of that stuff was done, then yeah, he should look like the photo, but yeah.
Well, I guess it's a good thing he's not in a wooden box on the piano.
Yeah.
Anyway,
shush. Save some trouble.
Anyway, the old man reluctantly agrees to look and do the comparison. He takes the photo from Steele, and he calls out to a young man who's been casually observing from a distance, and the four of them go out to the cart. The young man opens the casket. The old man compares the photo to the deceased and declares, "It is the same man." And then he slams the lid and stomps off. Well, you can't convince him of that. He's sure they never make mistakes.
Yeah.
Laura and Steele follow the old man back into the shop, protesting, wherein he begins to try to upsell them to a fancier casket.
I mean, you got to admire the sales, the dedication here, because that's impressive. Like, they've got the wrong body, but hey, you want to make sure he goes out in style.
Yeah. Anyway, after he offers them a upgrade, he then offers them some time alone for a moment of serenity to give them time to decide. And Steele basically throws up his hands in frustration, saying, "This is it, Laura, the absolute nadir of our relationship. Stuck in the middle of the Mediterranean with an associate who won't associate and a body that nobody wants." And then, of course, Laura just happens to catch sight of the mortician's young assistant stealing their cart and their casket. Yeah. Anyway, they chase him through the streets. And as they're doing so, the young man climbs back into the back of the cart, not cart, back onto the back of the, cart. And he gets into the casket, he opens it, and removes a broken piece of a Maltese cross, a much smaller piece than what we saw earlier. Laura and Steele catch up. Steele jumps onto the cart, and a short fight ensues. Steele knocks the young man off the cart onto the street before falling off the cart himself. Laura tries tackling the young man as he's getting up, but he manages to get away. But as he's running up the street to get away from Laura and Steele, a car comes down the street from the other direction. The two collide, and the young man is killed. And in the meantime, their cart has gone over the cliff.
Yeah, you might say the cart was put before the horse. Sorry, not sorry.
The driver of the car gets out, and we see that it is the woman who shot the young Carlisle at the beginning of the episode. As she approaches, Steele and Laura are looking over the body of the young man. Steele picks up the cross piece, which we now can see is not the same piece as before, like I mentioned, but it is in fact what would be the missing piece, which also happens to be the name of a great album by a prog rock band called Gentle Giant. Go check it out. Anyway,
nice.
Sorry, had to get that in there.
Nice plug.
Steele tells the woman that the young man. What did I write here? I have no idea what I wrote. Steele tells Laura that the young man took it out of the casket, and when Laura asks what it is, he says he doesn't know, but it doesn't look like anything worth dying for. The woman who's now standing next to Laura and Steele says, in something of a put-on innocent little girl voice, "He was right in the middle of the road. I couldn't stop."
This is the same sort of treacly fake sounding tone that Anna uses in Woman of Steel, and I guess maybe that's why it bugged me so much that he fell for it then, because he falls for it here too, right? And I guess an attractive blonde, seemingly helpless attractive blonde, and that's subject. I just mean in general, like any, it seems that he doesn't really.
I've seen better.
Think with his brain is all I'm saying. He's not thinking with his
yeah, well, that's true.
Brain.
Yeah. Anyway, next we see the young man being loaded into an ambulance. I guess actually it'd probably be what do they call it?
Like a hearse?
Yeah. Meat wagon. There we go. Yeah.
I wonder if he'll get a discount, like because the assistant's dead, right? Like I wonder if Mr. Ford will just, bury him at a discounted rate he gets the employee. That is an employee discount I would not want. That's all I'm saying.
No.
10% off your next burial.
Hey, give you a card. As soon as you get you're buried 9 times, we'll give you the 10th one for free.
5 relatives, your 6th one's free.
Oh, yes.
Oh, no.
Anyway, so as he's being loaded in, we see another player. It's a middle-aged man with a receding hairline wearing sunglasses. He's leaning against the tree some distance away, observing. Well, we learn that the woman is using the last name of Cable, whether that's her real name or not. I don't think we ever find out.
No, we never find out.
And she's playing the part of the distraught innocent, saying things like, "He just appeared from nowhere. I should have been able to stop. I could have swerved." And Steele puts his arm around her as if consoling her, though I think it's maybe more for show than anything.
Yeah.
And she asks if the police found anything on the body, and then corrects herself, saying identification. Steele tells her that the young man was Hector Toulouser. Yeah,
I think it's Toulouse.
Whatever, yeah. Toulouse?
Yeah.
Okay. Who worked for the local undertaker. And then after a little bit more meaningless conversation, Steele asks if she's well enough to drive. She begins with the fake tears and the fake crying, and Steele again jumps in to console her, suggesting that he should drive her home. But when she declines his offer, he insists that she not hesitate to call him if she needs anything, and he tells her that they're staying at the Hotel Phoenicia.
It's Felicia.
What?
Yeah, I found that rather funny.
No, except it's a Hotel Phoenicia.
Are you sure? Because it looked like Felicia to me.
Yeah.
Oh, I guess I read it wrong.
Hotel Phoenicia, which is a real place. Actually, I think I might have that in my notes somewhere. Okay. But yeah, it's a real hotel. Yeah, I've got it in my notes because later on it becomes important.
I think it's interesting because, yeah, she's clearly overdoing it. She's faking this whole distraught act. But if
neither one of them catch it,
and Steele is being his usual like, oh, there, poor thing kind of thing. But like, if she had really truly,
maybe I'll get lucky. Lucky.
If she had really truly accidentally run over some poor guy, I wouldn't be able to drive. Like, I wouldn't be able to get behind. If I had just killed somebody with my vehicle,
You might have to take a
I
pause.
think the
Yeah.
last thing I'd want to do is get behind the wheel of a car. So, like, I don't know. I think the fact that she declines his offer is what is suspicious more so than the actual crocodile tears, because I was in a car accident years ago, and it was the first time I'd ever been in any sort of accident, and it was not my fault. It was weather related. Plus, it turns out the brakes on my dad's truck had been recalled, and we just hadn't been notified. But
Oh,
yeah,
well, that's
you know,
not a big deal.
found out
Just
after.
breaks.
Yeah,
Who wants to
who needs
stop?
those, right?
Yeah.
And we were going to Toronto, and it was like a multi-car accident. We weren't the only ones that were involved. And I remember they had to tow the truck, and my brother drove our car out to meet us. We were driving my parents' vehicle, and Scott was very much like, he told me, you need to drive this car home, because if you don't, you're not going to want to get behind the wheel of a car again. And so for a couple of years after that, driving to Toronto was really anxiety inducing for me. Not necessarily because of the drive itself, just because going down that highway where the accident happened was like, I would tense up, and I would, yeah. So if that accident involved you killing somebody, I don't think you'd be too eager to drive.
Yeah. I know exactly what you're saying. A number of years ago. Okay. Self-humiliation time. Yeah.
Not me, so I'm in.
I had upgraded a motorcycle. Well, my wife and I had planned a trip, and during the planned a trip for the weekend, and it was during that week, actually, like the first part of the week or something, maybe the weekend before, I had traded in my older, smaller motorcycle for a big bike, and was talking to the guy and said, yeah, we got this trip down to Whittier planned. And he says, well, when you're going through the tunnel, just be careful, because it's a tunnel that's shared by cars and a train. There's only one lane in the tunnel, and you have to ride down in between the tracks. And it's also grooved pavement through that tunnel, which, if you've never ridden a motorcycle, that can be a little bit hairy, because it's not grooved across the road surface. It's grooved with it. And it has a tendency to want to guide your tires off in weird directions. And I said, well, I've ridden grooved pavement before. That's not a big deal. Between the railroad tracks, yeah, okay, kind of maybe a little bit weird, but yeah, I think I'll be fine. And so we went ahead and took the trip, and going into Whittier, and mind you, this tunnel is several miles long, and you're riding between these railroad tracks for several miles. And going in, we were fine, did okay. But coming back out,
oh no.
I did mention that it's shared with trains, right? Yeah. And it's single lane, right? And coming back, I was doing okay, got part of the way through, and then I started looking up, and there was a light at the end of the tunnel, and it was a train.
Oh no.
Now,
oh, no.
my rational mind said, no, the train is stopped. It's at the far end of the tunnel. They're holding it. They're going to, that's how this works. They hold the train, they hold the traffic so that traffic one direction can go, and then either the traffic the other direction or the train goes. So my rational mind is saying, it's okay, calm down. My irrational mind is saying, mistakes happen.
Yeah.
Trains have accidents all the time. What am I going to do if it starts coming at me? It could be coming at me. How would I tell? And I stopped paying attention to what I was doing, and I wound up, I lost control. I hopped over the railroad track and slammed up against the side, and there's this big old concrete, like a curb, several inches tall. And yeah, fortunately, the bike didn't go over. My wife was on the back, so was our dog. And so it wasn't a huge disaster. But ever since then, even when I am in a car, if I'm taking a passenger down to Whittier on an Uber trip, I get to that tunnel and it's like, yeah, I don't like this tunnel.
So the moral of the story,
not like this tunnel.
The moral of the story here, people, is that sometimes the light at the end of the tunnel is a train.
That's right. That's right. Oh man. But no, I hear what you say. And yeah, she would have She would have probably wanted to have taken a pause
Yeah.
before getting into a car
I
and
would
driving
think so.
away. I would agree. I would definitely agree. Anyway, she does get in her car and she leaves. And as she does, we see that the man who had been observing does the same. Interesting. Well, next we see that the horse and the wagon and the coffin have been recovered, brought back to Steele and Laura, and then they all take a trip back to the undertaker's. Well, they've been questioning him to no avail except to learn that Carlisle had no personal effects at the time of his embalming. Steele contemplates the broken piece of the cross, asking somewhat rhetorically what was so important about it that the late Hector would have gone to so much trouble to smuggle it out of Malta in a casket. Laura suggests that perhaps, given the difficulty that they themselves had getting into the country through customs, perhaps it was being smuggled into the country and Hector was supposed to retrieve it.
Yep.
Laura posits that things may make more sense once they find the young Carlisle's body, and then she asks the mortician how many other bodies were embalmed on the same day as Carlisle's. The man consults his somewhat disorganized records. He just pulls them out of a big pile and starts pawing through them, and he states that there was one other that day, a Mr. Abdul Ahmad. Well, Laura and Steele conclude that the body that they have is Mr. Abdul Ahmad, and that the young Carlisle was sent to Ahmad's family. So now they have to locate Ahmad's grave and get permission to have it exhumed, except that Borgward tells them that it's going to take a little bit of time to get the body exhumed. 2 weeks, maybe 6 months. It's like, okay, that's quite a time range there.
Yeah, right? Like it's like when it's like when you're waiting for something to be delivered and they're like, it'll take between 2 and 7 hours. So you need to be in your house this entire time. And you're like, awesome.
Or the cable company. Yeah, we'll be here sometime between 8 in the morning and 5 in the evening.
Right? Like, okay, cool. I don't have to work or go anywhere. It's fine.
That's right. Yeah. So anyway, Steele asks if the man will keep a watch on their spare body. He declines for reasons he says that he cannot explain. Yeah.
Just doesn't want to bury it for free.
I wouldn't want to watch it either. I mean, I would think there's a liability issue there. Of course, then again, he sent the wrong body out, so there's still a liability issue. Anyway, Steele asks if there's another mortuary in town where they might, but Borgward cuts him off, stating that this is a one mortuario town. Laura suggests that perhaps they could come to some sort of, she starts to say agreement, I think, but then she catches herself, realizes what she needs to say, and says some sort of transaction.
Yeah.
And of course, at the prospect of money, the man's attitude suddenly changes.
Oh, yeah, he's got all the time
rushes off to get his an order. So he rushes off to get his order book. Well, disheartened, Steele observes that they have their work cut out for them if they expect to get home by the turn of the century. Laura sardonically responds that this is just what she's always wanted to do on a sultry Mediterranean night. Steele expresses a lack of comprehension. She clarifies, rob a grave. That night at the hotel, Steele exits his room, and the man who we observed earlier at the incident with Miss Cable and Hector sees Steele leave. Then he goes to the room, picks the lock on the door, and lets himself in. Down at the bar.
Have you noticed that Mr. Steele seems to only ever wear a white tuxedo when they're out of the country? I mean, there might be 1 or 2 occasions where they're in LA, but he seems to break out the white tux when they're, like in Mexico or in Malta.
In Steele at It, he was in a black tux.
For part of it, but he was.
Because remember, he wore
a white one when they were when they were being sung to.
That's true.
Sorry for Steal Away With Me. He was in a white tux. But yeah, I don't know. It occurred to me that he tends to break out the white when they're elsewhere.
That could just be a decision that was made that that's how he would behave. Anyway, down at the bar, Steele orders himself a drink and then looking around spots Miss Cable sitting, having a drink. Not at all suspicious.
Not at all coincidental. Like the woman just killed a man and she's out for drinks.
Yeah, and just happens to be at the hotel that he's at.
Yeah.
So he takes his drink and goes over to join her. She feigns surprise at their meeting, and I think Steele seems to recognize that their meeting was not perhaps quite by
he knows.
chance.
He knows.
Now, I think he may have a different reason for thinking it's not a coincidence
Yeah,
than
for
it really
sure.
is. But yeah,
He thinks that she's hot for him.
Yeah. Anyway, they make some small talk. She tries to play on his sympathies by saying that she's there because she couldn't find comfort in the thought that. She finds comfort in the thought that even in a foreign place, one can depend on the kindness of strangers. Yes, from a movie.
Yeah.
Anyway, not so subtly, she asks Steele what he's doing in Malta, and when he answers that it's a long story, she suggestively responds that what was it? My note here. Yeah. Boy, I really did a bad job on these notes. She says something about make it short, but she's got all night.
Yeah.
Hang on. What is that? What is that line?
I think it was make it short. I've only got all night.
Checking my notes here.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. There we go. Yeah. Well, that's what I wrote, but it just didn't make sense when I read it.
It doesn't make
notes.
sense. It's nonsensical. But I guess it's meant to imply that, I'm here for as long as you want me to be here, you handsome stranger, you.
Yeah, I'm sure that's what it's meant to mean.
Yeah.
Anyway, next Mildred comes into the bar and steps over as to order. The bartender hands her a glass of wine. And when she asks about it, the bartender tells her that it's compliments of the gentleman. And he points to the secretive middle-aged man who had been keeping watch on everybody earlier. He gestures for her to join him, and she quickly and enthusiastically takes him up on his offer.
Poor Mildred.
Yeah. He introduces himself as Edvard Jensen. He doesn't like Eddie.
No, he wants Edvard.
It's Edvard, yes. She introduces herself, and he says he already knows who she is, that they came over on the same plane, and that he is so very pleased that they are staying at the same hotel. And he continues the ingratiating approach, asking if he can call her Mildred, and she can call him Edvard. And what mischievous stroke of fate has arranged for their paths to cross on Malta? It's like, Anyway, Mildred jokingly says that if she had all night, she might begin to tell him, and he slickly replies that, well, it just so happens that he does have all night. To which Mildred gives him an eager smile. Yeah, seems like everybody might think they're going to get lucky tonight. Anyway, Laura enters the scene. Laura. I was going to say, she's not going to get lucky, or she's not even going to think she's going to get lucky. She looks around, spots Steele and Miss Cable, spots Mildred and Jensen.
She may not
decides to go to the bar, and
she may not think she's getting lucky, but she's dressed to kill here. Again, we may differ on this, but that is a stunning outfit. Like that gold crop top with the white pants. I think it just the gold brings out the tones of her skin. It's classy, but still kind of slightly risky. I'm a fan. I like this outfit. How could you not like this outfit?
I don't know. I don't have to explain it to you.
I'm gonna put a poll up on the Facebook group.
No.
I think she looks gorgeous.
Anyway, I don't know. The color may not be bad, but it's just the outfit itself. It just doesn't do it for me. Anyway, she decides to go to the bar, orders herself a glass of wine, but then she hears psst, psst, and turns to see Mildred motioning her to join. So Mildred introduces Laura and Jensen to each other. Jensen again starts with the flattery, only now he's extending it to Laura. And then, of course, moments later, Steele and Cable join, and more introductions are made. Steele suggests that they all go to dinner together, but before they set out, Laura drags Steele away on the excuse that they have something to discuss. Mildred, go make sure that we can get a table, okay? Yeah. So they leave Jensen and Cable alone. And while everyone is out of earshot, Cable begins chastising Jensen, calling him an idiot, saying that after he had put the missing piece in the coffin, he was supposed to wait in Los Angeles until she contacted him. So now, if we didn't know it already, we know they're working together.
Yep.
Jensen says that he is by nature a suspicious man and that it was he who found the piece and that he intends to get his full share. And when Cable dismisses his suspicions, he brings up the deaths of Hector and Carlisle as just grounds for his suspicions. Cable says that Hector was a fool and Carlisle was careless. And besides, without them, they only have to split the treasure 2 ways.
Yeah, you can totally trust
really
that.
Should. Yeah, I got it right in here, which really should only validate any concerns he has about his long-term well-being.
Yeah, exactly. She's willing to kill the other 2 off.
Yeah, and be rather cold and mercenary about it. Yeah, what's one more,
Yeah.
Out in the lobby, Laura's doing a bit of chastising on her own, reminding Steele that they're supposed to be robbing a grave, not throwing a dinner party. And Steele assures her that he fully intends to be in top form, but she isn't reassured by his assurances. As the group is finishing up their dinner, as we have a time jump forward, Mildred asks Steele if they're all going to go on the gondola ride, and Steele practically chokes on his drink at the prospect. Laura short-circuits the idea by stating that she and Steele have a big day coming up. And Steele, who just moments earlier seemed to be less than enthusiastic about the prospect of gondola ride, suddenly seems to be regretful at having to agree with Laura. It's like, make up your mind.
Yeah.
Although it's maybe more about the private friction between the two of them and the gondola ride being merely a symbol of her dominance in their relationship.
Well, that, or there's certain parts of his body that are driving the bus at this point, and he's,
He's thinking with the alternate head.
Exactly.
Anyway, the group breaks up with everybody doing their Walton's impersonation.
Good night.
And then after, night, John boy. After Steele and Mildred and Laura have left, Cable and Jensen arrange to meet the following morning.
Now they're in their crime clothes. In the next scene.
Yes, I was going to say, next we see Laura and Steele heading out of the hotel in their crime clothes. They flag down a taxi and get in. And Miss Cable, who's been sitting in a car nearby, sees and follows. And then Jensen, also wearing crime clothes,
at least he dressed for the occasion.
He too follows. Yeah, she didn't. Yeah.
No, she didn't. I don't think she got the memo.
Anyway, next we are in a cemetery and we see a man, the caretaker, walking through the cemetery, being totally oblivious to anything and everything.
I have a couple of questions here.
Yeah. Okay.
I have 2. Well, 2 questions and 2 references you're going to roll your eyes at. But the first question,
oh no,
it looks like the ground is made of solid rock. So how the heck are they digging? Mm-hmm. Right? Like, I didn't see any dirt. I just saw rock. And 2, like, he just walks out. How did he not know that grave was open? That is a terrible security guard. Putting into that in Buffy reference terms, there are a couple of episodes where they end up in graveyards. Many episodes actually, because she patrols for vampires.
Probably, yeah.
And there's one particular episode where she trips and falls into an open grave, and she says something like, "Gee, I wish people wouldn't leave open graves lying around like that." And so that's kind of what that reminded me of. But it also made me think of a scene where they're digging up a body in a Buffy episode, and Buffy's not doing anything despite the fact that she has super strength. It's all the others that are doing it. And Xander says something along the lines of, "You femmes want to, pick up a shovel and pitch in." And she says, "I'm an old-fashioned girl. I was raised to believe that men dig up the bodies and the women have the babies." So at least both Steele and Laura are digging up the body. But did that look like solid rock to you? Because it...
Well, it looks like there is rock there, but it looks like it's cut stone. So, and then if you look when they have the wider shots there where you can see a whole lot more scenery and such, there's a lot of dirt piled up and around them.
Okay.
So I was thinking that was just like there's a wall behind them. So I was thinking that was either just part of the footer for that wall, or maybe, I don't know what the protocol is here in Malta. Maybe they line the grave hole with blocks, and then they drop the casket in and cover it with dirt. I don't know, but there's an awful lot of dirt around that they presumably dug up. So There's definitely a lot of rock there, but
The security guard just doesn't notice.
hand wave,
He's walking
hand wave,
along.
hand wave.
He just walks right on by. Oh, look, an open grave. La, la, la.
Yeah, and that's it. He just walks on and it's like, boo. So, yeah, he doesn't notice the open grave, doesn't notice the big piles of dirt.
Unlike the
Yeah.
security guard at the Historical Society who goes above and beyond for his job. So maybe, he could take a page out of that
Yeah.
guy's book.
Yeah. So anyway, after he passes, Laura and Steele, who have been hiding in the hole, stand up and resume their excavations. And then we see Miss Cable sneak into the cemetery, and as she does, she makes a slight noise that Laura and Steele hear. They look around, but Cable's hiding behind a large marker so they don't see her. Steele cautiously dismisses the sound as probably a cat or something. Steele returns to his digging momentarily, but then they hear another noise. Jensen has arrived. And still unable to see anything amiss, Steele returns to his digging and almost immediately encounters something, remarking, "That's not a cat, Laura." And of course, it's the coffin of which they have been seeking. They kneel down, wipe the dirt from the lid. Steele suggests that Laura might not want to look. Yeah, except that they looked at Carlisle. He looked really good. They were both embalmed on the same day. Is Steele suggesting that maybe this one wasn't embalmed properly? I don't know.
It's a weird statement for him to make, considering how many dead bodies they've both seen. It's not like this is new.
Okay, there's that too, yeah. There's that too, yeah. Anyway, Laura stands and turns her back to the coffin. Steele opens the lid and then drops the lid and stands up next to Laura with an astonished, "Good Lord!" Laura turns, kneels down, lifts the lid to peer inside, and the coffin is empty. She stands, moves next to Steele, and repeats his astonished comment. Steele begins with film attribution. The third man, Joseph Cotton, Orson Welles, London Films, 1949. Cotton arrives in post-war Vienna looking for his old friend Harry Lime, who seems to have had a bit of an accident. And Laura finishes up saying, "Everybody thought Lime was dead, but he suddenly turned up alive." And Steele's surprised. Says, "Oh, you saw the film, did you?" "No, I just had an idea that's what you were going to say."
I like that.
Steele wonders aloud if Carlisle had faked his own death in order to smuggle the piece back into Malta. Laura concurs, saying that somebody obviously knew that the body would be returning to Malta. And so then she asks to see the artifact, which Steele hands to her for a moment. They climb out of the grave hole, none too carefully or quietly.
No.
And as they do, they stumble on a large marker that catches their attention. Under the observation of Cable and Jensen, they wipe the dirt away from the marker that they spotted, and they see a Maltese cross on the front. And Steele states the obvious. What they have is a piece of a Maltese cross. Now, Laura says all they have to do is figure out what's so important about it and where the rest of it is. And of course, as they're talking about it, Steele is holding it up, giving Cable and Jensen a good view of it.
Yeah.
But not a problem. Cable and Jensen have come prepared, and each raises a gun and aims. And just at that moment, the caretaker, no longer totally oblivious, returns, irate, rhetorically asking, "Hey, what is this, a convention?"
It's a good question. I mean, you don't...
Yeah.
First, I'm kind of curious as to why they even have a security guard on duty at a graveyard. I mean...
Maybe they have a lot of grave robbery going on.
I guess.
I mean,
I don't know that I would want that job. I think I would pass.
Well, yeah, I can understand that. I mean, those places can be a little bit creepy at night.
Yeah.
I mean, kind of weird. Anyway, so Jensen gets a shot off. I'm not sure exactly who he was aiming at, because to me, it almost looked like he was aiming at Cable.
Yeah, that's what it did look like that.
Yeah. So anyway, he gets shot off. Caretaker hits dirt. Then then Jensen and Cable take off running in different directions. Laura and Steele, who had also hit the deck, sit up and begin looking for the source of the shots, with Laura asking, "Since when do Maltese cats carry guns?" Back at the hotel, they decide that the next day that they're going to need to find someone who can tell them what would make a Maltese cross valuable enough to kill for. Laura warns Steele to beware of thieves in the night. Steele suggests that as a purely precautionary measure, they should team up for the night. Laura tells Steele, no, he'll do just fine without her.
Yeah, and this is So she's suspicious of his intentions here, but she's sharing a room with Mildred. So
Mhm.
is she assuming that he's inviting her to his room? Because if so, that would leave Mildred unprotected. And if not, then she couldn't necessarily assume that he's wanting to get snuggly because Mildred's in the next bed. So
Well, he may figure that Mildred would be safe because the only two people seen at the graveyard by whoever took the shot at him were Laura and Steele. Maybe not the best of logic, but
yeah,
I can see where he might have thought that. So yeah, he might have been inviting her over, but I just find her
yeah,
comment
you'll be
that
fine on your own.
he'll be fine without her,
Yeah,
as if yeah. Anyway, the thing is that kind of implies that he's somehow more susceptible than she is of falling victim to thieves in the night.
I think
Which
it's more that she's sarcastically saying that because she knows that he's not really all that worried. He just
mhm,
wants the two of them to be alone together. Like she's still suspecting his motives. He has ulterior motives here. So she's
mhm,
kind of like,
yeah,
I think maybe being a little condescending, like, yeah, I think you're going to be fine. You're okay. You know, you're,
yeah.
but yeah,
Well, yeah, I think the two, your comment and my comment, kind of fit together
yeah.
in that sense. So, anyway, they go to their rooms, and then Miss Cable, who's had Steele's room staked out, waits a short while, then knocks on his door. Steele, half dressed, comes out from the bathroom to answer the door, and Cable asks if she can come in, and Steele welcomes her with an eager grin.
Yeah.
Once inside, she begins spinning the yard about an unidentified man hanging around her home, and it only started after the earlier car accident, and she just didn't know who to turn to. And as she's spinning her web, she takes off her wrap in a somewhat obvious way. Steele, seemingly at first only interested in her presumed plight as an excuse to position himself as her protector, suddenly makes the leap that her supposed stalker must have some connection to Carlisle. And playing dumb, she says, "Who?" And that little gesture of her with her hands of spreading them out, like
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
how
It's really bad.
obviously fake can
Yeah.
you be? Come on, Steele, get your anyway.
Yeah, well, and my question here is like he seems perfectly and to be fair, Laura has put the brakes on their relationship. So he's free to do whatever he wants to do. Sure.
Mm-hmm.
But he's not wasting any time either. Like the first woman that shows any interest whatsoever and he seems pretty eager to, well, if I can't have Laura, I'm just going to sleep with whoever shows up. And I don't know that.
He's not reacting the way somebody who was seriously emotionally invested in a
Yes,
relationship
that's what I was trying
would
to
be
say.
behaving.
I was trying to find a way
Yes.
to say that better. But yeah, like if he were seriously invested in a relationship with Laura and really wanted to make it work and she put a stop to things, even if he's respecting that, I would think he would take a little time to either process the fact that their relationship's over or, you know, maybe take a little time hoping she'll change her mind. But either way, it seems like he's
Mm-hmm.
pretty eager to get back in the saddle, so to speak. And it just feels kind of icky.
Yeah, and it's a little bit. I'm going to say a little bit. Well, basically, it says, "Yeah, I was telling you I was really, really serious about this, but I was just,
Yeah, like if I
I
can't have
wasn't.
you, I'm
I
happy
was
with whoever
lying.
comes along. And it
Yeah,
just yeah,
yeah.
I would hope
It was an act.
if you're working with that same person, like again, he doesn't have to remain a monk. If the relationship's really over, eventually he's going to
Right.
move on, but this is pretty quick. Like
Eventually,
what's that?
yeah. Eventually,
Eventually, yeah. You would take a little
I
time.
mean, it may not be years and years, but yeah, you're going to give it a little time because you're hoping that you can demonstrate that the decision to put the brakes on it was a mistake.
Exactly. Or you're processing that loss and not really ready to kind of
Mm-hmm.
get back out there, but either way, like I don't know,
Yeah,
I don't like it. It feels gross.
yeah. Anyway, Steele, after she plays dumb and says, "Who?"
Mhm.
Steele runs to the bed and pulls out the mysterious crosspiece
Oh,
from under his
dummy.
pillow where he has hid it. Um, I got a question about that. It'll come up here in just a few minutes. But yeah, we'll come back to that. He shows it to Cable and explains that the man who she ran into with her car had been carrying it. And continuing her dumb act, she asks what it is.
Mhm.
He returns the piece to the underside of his pillow, saying that that's what he's still trying to figure out. And then with a sense of breathlessness, Cable asks, I'm not in any danger, am I?
I think you're a better actor than she is.
And at this point, I got to say, Steele is either demonstrating a total lack of competence as a detective, or he's willfully ignoring the obvious, because she is clearly putting on an act.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't totally clear before, it should be now.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Anyway, Steele slowly approaches her and tells her, no, none whatsoever, as he casually rubs his chest with his hand. I wonder if I would like to have seen a script and see if that was scripted or if that was an impromptu act on Brosnan's part.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious.
Anyway, as she continues her faux concern for her safety, Steele wraps his arms around her and begins nuzzling her ear, whispering that he has a bottle of that good old standby for seductions, Dom Perignon, in his refrigerator. And with his back to the window, he doesn't see Jensen walking across the balcony, but Cable does. So as Steele leans in to kiss her, she responds, if only to ensure Steele's attention doesn't wander. And here's where here's where I cry foul. The rooms I went and looked up the hotel.
Okay.
On the internet.
Okay.
I looked at photos of it. Now, and also we can kind of see in a few shots, although usually I think at this point they've been in the dark, so we can't really tell clearly. The rooms at the hotel do have balconies, but they are not connected balconies. And there are at least 3 to 4 feet between them based on what I can see from the online photos. So I'm not sure that somebody of Jensen's physical condition and construction would really want to try to jump from one to the other.
Well,
and if he did, I would think it would be somebody would probably hear something.
There's 2 possible explanations. 1, they just needed a set that worked and they didn't really care about the actual logistics. 2, maybe the hotel has been remodeled since, because this was 40 years
that's a possibility
ago. So it could be, yeah.
I suppose that's a possibility. Yeah.
But you're right. Like, he wouldn't want to be. He's not Spider-Man, for crying out loud. Although it is funny that it seems to be
Spider-Man.
No matter where they are sleeping, someone can get in if there's a balcony or, some other way of sneaking into the room.
Well, it's even worse.
Yeah.
It's even worse coming up here. Hang on a second. We'll get there. In the next room, Laura and Mildred are asleep in their beds, and we see through the blinds that Jensen is now on their balcony. Well, back in Steele's room, Cable is still kissing Steele, but we can see that she has her purse in her hands behind his back. She's opened it, and she's pulling out a gun. But before she can do anything with the gun, there's a scream from the adjoining room. Steele rushes to the adjoining doors, but the door to the other side is locked. He turns, runs out the front door of his room, and starts to leave toward the other room. And as he does, Cable rushes to his bed, obviously to try and snatch the piece of the cross. But Steele runs back in, telling her he almost forgot. He heads to the bed, reaches under his pillow, and grabs the mystery piece. Except that he doesn't seem to take any special notice of the fact that Cable has moved from where she was in the middle of the room to be over by his bed, standing and then sitting next to the pillow.
Yeah.
Anyway, Steele rushes out of the room, and Cable, I think angry at being thwarted, follows. Next, we see Steele rushes into Laura and Mildred's room. Hello. We're supposed to believe that Laura locked the adjoining door,
but not the actual door.
Didn't bother to lock the door to the hallway, even after she had explicitly told Steele to beware of thieves in the night.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, they were both seen at the graveyard. Nobody who saw them could necessarily know which one of the two of them would have that piece. Both of them, I would have thought, were susceptible.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
But she leaves the front door unlocked. Oh, come on. Do these people ever lock doors?
No. No, they don't. It doesn't matter. They get in anyway. So, you know.
That's right. Hey, they've got a balcony.
Yeah.
Why lock the front door? They'll come in through the balcony.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, Laura and Mildred express their anger, fear, and frustration at the sort of sleazy place where people break into your room in the middle of the night. Although they admitted that they really didn't know what had happened because they were asleep. Yep. Steele says it's probably not an issue of being sleazy and that whoever broke in was looking for that mystery piece of the cross, which he holds up to show to Mildred. Cable enters the room and asks, "What happened?" As if she didn't know. Steele assures her that it was merely a matter of somebody having wandered into the wrong room. Well, Mildred decides that she should take the mystery piece down to the hotel safe to be locked up overnight.
Why wasn't it there in the first place?
Which begs the...
Sorry, I probably
That's
just
right
stepped
there
on
in my
your note
notes.
there, but yeah, like if this is such an important artifact and it's the key to the case, you would think that it would be in better hands in a safe than under his pillow.
Well, and not only that, but there are hotels that have safes in the room.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, so they had options.
Yeah.
It's not like they had to keep it under the pillow.
It was like the least secure spot you could put it.
Yeah, probably. Well, no, if they'd have just left it on the dresser, that would have probably been more so, enough. But not much. But I mean, yeah, the pillow's not much better. Anyway, after Mildred leaves with the piece, Cable suddenly decides that she needs to be going and suddenly remembers that she has a friend that she could stay with.
Yeah, how convenient.
The friend that she couldn't think of earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Hello, Steele. Get a clue. McFly. Cable leaves, leaving Steele frustrated. And of course, Laura isn't happy with Steele or his behavior, and sternly tells him that she can just imagine the headlines. The headlines. Imagine the headlines. The great American detective romancing woman while associates murdered in the next room. And Steele inaccurately states that he was in bed.
Yeah.
Leading Laura, I think, to a wrong conclusion.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, definitely.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it definitely sets her off because she sarcastically apologizes that the attack on her life interrupted his evening. Steele dismissively tells her not to punish herself over it, as these things happen, no matter how inconvenient it might be for some.
This is the worst thing he could have said.
Yeah. I mean, after all, it wasn't her fault, rather implying that maybe it was, but it certainly wasn't his fault. Yeah. Oh, and if...
Like, obviously, Laura, she's frustrated. She's scared. And there's probably an element of jealousy here, but I would think that it's more the fact that she nearly died. And again, we kind of talked about how he seems to be moving on pretty quick. Like that would be, I think that would be pretty hurtful. So yeah, ouch.
Well, if you thought Laura was upset before, now she's really hot.
Yeah, exactly.
She resents the implication that it is somehow her fault, telling him that he's had his mind on everything but the case ever since they got there, thereby implying that it is his fault. And of course, frustrated, Steele asks if she's always this grumpy at night.
Yeah, right?
Laura says, no, only when she wakes up with a man's hands around her throat. And I've got back the assault train up a minute.
Right.
How did we jump from, I don't know we were asleep, to hands around my throat? Is that a little bit like they came out blasting with machine guns in the last episode?
Yeah, that's a weird... she might be over... Because if he got that close, then... Yeah, I don't know. It could be that she's over-exaggerating because she's scared and frustrated and mad. Or she didn't tell him everything at the beginning. I don't know.
I've got a different version of that. She's trying to win the argument. So she'll say whatever she has to win.
Could be that too. Yeah.
Anyway, Steele doesn't take kindly to the implication that the attack on her was somehow his fault, arguing that if she hadn't locked the connecting door, he would have been in the room to catch the villain. And Laura's had enough. She angrily marches to the bed, gets in, and dismisses Steele with a cold good night.
I mean...
Well...
I kind of wonder
Yeah.
because, like you said, the front door wasn't locked. So why would the adjoining
Mm-hmm.
why lock the adjoining door? If he needs to get in there for whatever reason, he's probably going to knock. I don't think he's just going to walk in. Maybe it was for Mildred's
No, I
privacy.
mean, unless it's an emergency.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe Mildred locked it. I don't
Yeah,
know.
that's
I suppose
could
that's
have been.
possible. But again, why would Mildred lock the one door and not lock the other?
Yeah.
Makes no sense. Makes no sense. Anyway, next day we're back at the Historical Society where the caper began. Laura and Steele are studying the display case containing the Maltese cross. The informational card reads, "The Maltese cross, circa 1530, key to the legendary treasure of the Knights of Malta, but for the missing fourth piece. According to this, the completed cross is the key to a fabulous treasure of gold and precious gems." Steele pulls out their mystery piece, lays it on the glass above the display artifact, and they seem to match. Of course, his interest is heightened by the mention of the words gold and precious gems. Laura comments that even if Hector was merely the bagman, his share would have probably been worth millions. And Steele is, at this point, positively drooling.
He's salivating.
You mean to say that this plus that? Fabulous treasure? Watch the door, won't you, Laura? So he bends down as if preparing to break into the case, but Laura grabs him and pulls him back up to his feet. Laura asks, well, who was working with Hector? And if it's Benjamin Carlyle, where is he now? Then, pointing to the piece that they put down, she notices that their piece looks older than the rest of the cross that's on display. And as they're pondering this final question, an older gentleman approaches and asks if he can help them. They're momentarily taken off guard, but quickly recover, asking why the cross appears to be so new. I don't know what you're talking about. And where's the missing fourth piece? It's missing. It's been missing for centuries. That's why it's called the missing fourth piece.
Yeah.
Steele, assuming a disapproving tone, tells the man that the cross in the display is a fake. The man denies the accusation, stating that the cross was dated and authenticated by the British Museum in London, which isn't necessarily false.
Yep.
Laura responds with, suppose that I tell you that Mr. St. Albans here, pointing at Steele, was the supervisor of medieval history at the British Museum. And Steele, momentarily caught off guard, strokes the fire by conjuring, telling that he is of the mind to expose him in the Historical Society, and then demands the man's name. The man begins to panic, says his name is Thackeray, and that he begs them to promise not to tell anyone. But yeah, the real cross was stolen 2 weeks earlier. The police believe that the security guard was involved. Steele asks what would keep anyone from using the replacement cross to find the treasure. And in a perplexed tone, Thackeray says that surely the professor remembers that there was a map on the back of the original. And Laura starts to speak, but Steele cuts her off, asking Thackeray if the society has any other artifacts lying around that would lead to the treasure. And Thackeray says no, and then asks why. Steele, apparently having forgotten that he's supposed to be an expert, says, oh, no reason. It's just that archaeology fascinates me.
Yeah.
And Thackeray comments that presumably that fascination was why the professor had joined the British Museum. And Steele covers it by saying, well, yes, of course. Not only that, it delighted my mother.
I like that.
Yeah, that's kind of a nice save. But
Yeah.
anyway, back at the hotel, Cable arrives at Jensen's room. Once inside, Jensen grabs her purse and shoves her back down onto the bed. Cable is indignant. What's he doing there? They're supposed to be partners. Jensen retorts that partners don't double-cross each other. Disgusted, she says that if Jensen hadn't interfered the previous night, they would have the fourth piece already. And Jensen corrects her, saying that she would have the fourth piece. And where would he be? And when she turns her head and doesn't answer, Jensen says, exactly.
Yeah, he knows what's what.
Oh, yeah. He then basically tells her that he's assuming control of the operation and that she's going to be the one to start following orders. He's going to arrange to have the fourth piece delivered to himself. And then, if they're lucky and they live long enough to enjoy it, they will both be very, very rich. Well, Laura and Steele have been confronting the now disgraced security guard.
Poor guy.
Steele is repeating the man's story back to him in disbelief, trying to make sure he's got the man's unbelievable story straight. He caught a man stealing the Maltese cross from the display case at the Historical Society, chased him to a rundown hotel, up to a room where he strapped the cross to a falcon, let it go, and then bit on a poison capsule and fell dead. When the man says yes, as if one would say it when telling the truth that's so incredible that nobody believes them, Steele pauses, thinks about it for a minute, and then says, I believe you. And of course, Laura is shocked. She can't believe anybody would believe such a preposterously unbelievable story. And Steele points out that no one could or would make up such a preposterously unbelievable story. And when Laura asks the man if he really didn't have anything to do with the thief, wow, what a day. If he asks if the man didn't really have anything to do with the theft, he offers to swear on a stack of Bibles that he is an innocent man. Insert Billy Joel song. Laura asks Steele for the picture and then shows the photo of Carlisle to the guard, who identifies the man in the photo as the man who stole the cross. When Steele asks what the police did with the body, the man exclaims, well, that's the problem. When the police came, there was no body. And Laura, having forgotten about Harry, who got around fairly well for a dead man, says that a body couldn't have just gotten up and walked away.
Clearly they know it can.
Steele says that perhaps Carlisle did get up and walk away, and then suggests that they pay a visit to Carlisle's hotel room. Laura says that she wants Mildred to check on any falconers in the area. After all, someone has to know where Carlisle is, regardless if he's dead or alive. Next, we see Mildred and Jensen. They're walking along a sidewalk along the top of a seawall. Jensen has brought a picnic basket with him. Mildred admires the view of the bay. Jensen says that's why he brought her there. She admires the flowers growing in the displays along the way, and Jensen says, there is nothing so beautiful as a flower in full bloom, except perhaps a woman in full bloom. He leans in and kisses her. Yeah. Mildred says that he has no idea how long it's been since anyone's made her feel the way he does.
What about Kevin Masters? They were getting all cuddly.
Apparently not this cuddly.
Yeah, well... I just think it's like...
Yeah.
I don't know. She's a fictional character, but I feel quite protective of Mildred, and it sucks that this guy uses her this way, because she genuinely seems to care about him, or at least likes being treated the way that men are sort of falling over themselves to treat Laura sometimes, right? So, yeah, it's unfortunate.
Yeah. Anyway, he responds by saying that he feels as if he's known her for 100 years. And then he says that they should go because they don't want to miss the sunset, which kind of confused me.
Yeah, you'll catch it no matter where you are.
Yeah, unless it only happens in one certain spot and alongside the bay isn't one of them. Anyway, next we see a shot of Laura and Steele arriving at the hotel. While inside, Cable slips into Laura and Mildred's room. She leaves a note on Mildred's pillow, and then as she hears the sounds of Laura and Steele approaching the room, she slips out through the connecting door, which isn't locked. Convenient for her. Good for her. Anyway, Laura and Steele enter, expecting to find Mildred, but they find the note instead. And they read, unless you turn over the missing cross to me, you will never see Mildred Krebs alive again, and it is signed Carlisle. Apparently following instructions, we see Laura and Steele arrive at a seemingly abandoned building. Or is it? I was confused about this.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems fully furnished. It seems to be, electricity's on, everything's working. It appears to be occupied, except that as they walk, they have to pull away massive amounts of cobwebs that are stretched across the hallways.
That's kind of how I wrote in my notes. They go to the address they've been given and enter an old, falling apart building with cobwebs everywhere. I wondered if it was a derelict apartment complex or... Yeah, it's weird. It's weird because it doesn't look like anybody's lived there. Or if it's a hotel, it doesn't look like anybody's renting a room there. So...
Yeah, but if you look at it, there's plenty of furniture. You can see on the ground level behind them, as you're looking down the stairs and Steele and Laura are walking up, you can see a coffee table back there, and it's shiny. It's reflecting the light fairly well.
Yeah, it is weird.
So, is it one of those things where somebody's been living on the the ground level floor, and they have not used the stairs to go upstairs in so long that, I mean, it's just literally filled with cobwebs. I don't know. Seems weird to me.
Housekeeping took a day off, or several days.
Several years. Anyway, as they're walking up the marble staircase, they find a note attached to a wall by way of a knife. Go upstairs to the roof.
Talk about melodrama. Come on.
On the roof, they spot a falcon and make their way to it. Next to the bird, they find another note weighted down by a rock. Secure the fourth piece of the cross to the falcon and let it go. When I've received it safely, I will release Mildred Krebs. And again, it's signed Carlisle. Well, the situation has Laura angry with herself.
Yeah.
She says she knew she shouldn't have brought Mildred along, and she admits to Steele that he was right. She did bring Mildred as a buffer between the two of them. And she chastises herself, saying it was stupid, unprofessional, and once again, she let her personal feelings cloud her professional judgment. Steele rushes to her defense, telling her not to blame herself, that no one could have predicted how the case would turn out.
I mean, he's right about this, but it is interesting that he doesn't take this opportunity to kind of do an I told you so dance, right?
Yeah, I was going to go there. Yeah, but you got there first. Yeah.
But I think with Mildred's life in the balance, even he's not immature enough to dig that, to kind of poke at that wound, right? Like if something did happen to Mildred and Laura genuinely felt that she was partially responsible. Although, I mean, I think he's also right when he says, like, you couldn't have known what was going to happen. And also Mildred's an adult. So granted, she's not a detective, but she's also like, she's not helpless. So, obviously it's not her fault that she gets kidnapped, but it's also not solely Laura's fault for bringing her along. I think Laura's just upset because she brought Mildred for somewhat selfish reasons, and now Mildred's in trouble. So, yeah, I think Steele does a good thing here in not poking at that bear, essentially.
Yeah, he does. Anyway, Laura says, well, yeah, no one could have predicted how the case would turn out, but that doesn't make it any easier to accept the situation, as you were saying. She says Carlisle should have been there with Mildred, and he wasn't, and that scares her because she knows that if they follow the instructions and send the bird off with the fourth piece, Mildred becomes a liability that will have to be disposed of, and they've given away the only thing that they have to bargain with. Steele points out that if Laura is right about Mildred's fate and they don't send the piece, then they have nothing to bargain for.
This is an interesting conundrum because they're both kind of right.
Yeah. Well, and that's kind of, that's how these situations always are is, for example, I've never understood the, I'll say thought process, although you could argue that there isn't a whole lot of thought that had gone into it, of people who take hostages and then threaten to kill the hostages. It's like, okay, you realize that the only thing that's keeping you alive right now are the hostages.
Yeah, exactly.
So by killing them, you're actually saying basically, come get us.
Yep.
Because, yeah. Anyway, well, after Steele makes his comment about having nothing to bargain for, Laura thinks for a moment and then says, then, well, we need to make sure that the falcon isn't the only thing that comes Carlisle's way. Steele attaches the piece of the cross to the falcon's leg, suggesting that it shouldn't be too hard to follow that bird.
Okay, I don't know about you, but my notes read, seriously? With big exclamation marks.
I didn't go quite that extreme. I said, I'm going to say he's never tried it. Unless it was a big yellow bird.
Yeah, right? Because, I don't know. To me, it seems that bird is going to fly a lot faster and higher than they can necessarily see. And all it would take is going behind a building or something, and they've lost that bird.
Not only that, but the bird can fly in a straight line regardless of what's going on the ground. Whereas Steele and Laura, to follow him, they've got to follow the streets or the alleys. They cannot go in a straight line.
No.
Not to mention that, you know what? There might be other birds in the sky. And if this bird flies high enough, you're not going to be able to tell them apart.
It'd be hilarious if they followed the wrong bird and they ended up finding a pigeon or something. Yeah.
They followed that bird and they ended up in Sesame Street. Anyway, you know
Big Bird.
the movie
Yeah.
Follow the Bird.
Yeah.
Follow that. Yeah. Anyway, Steele releases the bird, and as soon as they do, they're already behind.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it.
'Cause
They
they
have
gotta
to
get
run
down.
downstairs.
Yeah.
Yeah, essentially going nowhere while the bird is still flying away. Why didn't they just hang on to it and let it?
You would
Anyway,
think that would be yeah.
yeah, you would think. There you go. There you go, thinking again.
Oh, sorry. So no thinking
Down the
zone.
street, they spot a horse-drawn carriage, and Steele tries hailing it as if it were a cab. But it's not a cab. It's a wedding coach.
Oh.
Ruining yet another newly married couple's beginning.
So my notes read, Laura and Steele ruining honeymoon since 1983. It's poor people.
Steele runs up. First, he pulls the groom down, telling him, "Look at this view. How lovely." And then pulls down the protesting bride, who demands to know who they are. Maltese Chamber of Commerce. Congratulations. You've just won the deluxe walking tour of Malta.
I would love to see fan fiction writers take note. I would love to see a story of all of the couples whose honeymoons have been ruined by Laura and Steele meeting at a support group. Ruined honeymoon support group or something like that, and they're all putting the pieces together.
Victims of marriage victims of the Remington Steele investigations. Yeah.
They took your hotel room? Oh, yeah? We had to walk.
Yeah, really. And in her wedding dress, she had to walk. Anyway, Laura and Steele jump into the carriage, and Laura tells the driver to follow that bird. Now, should we count this as a genuine movie reference?
I don't know.
I don't know when. I didn't look it up. I should have. I don't know when that movie came out.
Yeah, and I mean, we've had a couple. We've had The Third Man, and we've had oh shoot. Oh, he mentions the Maltese Falcon.
We haven't
later.
had Maltese Falcon yet.
So we have had a couple
Okay,
movies.
we can't reference it. It came out in 1985, so
okay.
we can't count it.
Okay.
So anyway, they chase the bird for some time, and then as they're going along, they see a postal carrier get off of a scooter, leaving it unattended.
Well, that's why the keys were in it. Okay, I must have missed that because I was wondering why the keys were conveniently once again in the scooter. In all the vehicles they seem to jump in, the keys just obviously are always there.
So the carrier gets off of it, leaves it unattended. Steele and Laura hop off the carriage and steal a scooter to continue their chase and their crime spree. The chase takes them down the beach, where they ride through the middle of a group of people playing a game, through a street market where they create. Say excuse me when you say that.
Oh, sorry. The game looked at. I could be wrong, but the game looked like it was bocce ball.
I don't know. I don't know that from nowhere.
Oh, okay. It's like similar to lawn bowling, but I don't know. I think
similar
of it
as lawn darts.
Lawn bowling. Sorry, I just think of it as a game that old people play. But anyway, sorry.
No, that's shuffleboard.
Does it count on a scooter? Like, is Laura still riding B-word on the scooter? Is that? Do we count scooters?
I don't know if it applies to a scooter or not. Scooters aren't really motorcycles, so
I was watching.
Maybe not.
I've been rewatching The Big Bang Theory, and I just recently finished it. And there's an episode where Howard buys a scooter, even though his wife has expressly told him not to. And at one point, he and Raj are riding together, and his wife makes a comment about like, you and your friend, or you've got your friend riding. And she says it that expression, which that's the first time I've ever heard it. And I was like, I know what that means. So yeah, but it was on a scooter. That's why I asked.
Yeah, I don't think it counts.
Okay.
Anyway, so they cut through the game of people playing on the beach. They cut through a street market where they create mayhem.
Yeah.
They go down a long set of stairs where Steele makes a joke about chasing the Maltese Falcon.
Yeah. And Laura somehow ended up holding onto a fish.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that she apparently picked up in the fish market, and then she tosses it and it lands in the lap of a blind beggar woman. I mean, come on.
Ouch.
Anyway, this leg of the chase ends at a pier, whereupon they steal a pair of jet skis that just happen to have had the keys left in them.
The keys magically left in them, yeah.
That's right. Probably by the same people who left the keys in their boats in Steele Attic.
Yeah, they need to really rethink that.
Yeah, the chase takes them across the bay, and then they hop off the jet skis, climb over some rocks, and come across a group of skeet shooters firing at their airborne targets with the Falcon in the middle of them. Steele and Laura yell at the men to stop shooting. That's our bird. And then they continue their pursuit. We go back to Mildred and Jensen, who are on the wall at the fort overlooking the bay. Jensen says that they need to keep going, but Mildred, she's not in a hurry. And in an attempt to delay, she tells Jensen that she really doesn't know anything about him. He tries to deflect, saying, "What is there to tell?" And Mildred says, "Oh, the usual things, where you were born, what you do for a living, things like that."
Yeah.
And again, he deflects, saying she'll know soon enough and that they really should go. Mildred suggests that, well, maybe they should dig into the contents of the picnic basket. So she grabs the basket and it's empty.
Yep.
And she realizes that something's wrong with this picture.
Yep.
Steele and Laura, in the meantime, have arrived at the fort. They run across the street and sidewalk to the outer wall of the fort and then begin climbing it.
Like Spider-Man.
And to make matters worse, partway up, Laura's foot slips.
Yeah.
I mean, she manages to hang on, but Steele reaches down and gives her a hand and they continue climbing. But wouldn't it have been nearly as fast and probably safer just to go through the front door?
The stairs? Yeah, I would think so.
Anyway, at the top of the fort, Jensen has the bird. He removes the piece of the cross and sends the bird off. Mildred is upset. Why did he have to lead her on? He might as well put a gun to her head.
That's, I think, the part that is the most hurtful. Like, if you're going to kidnap someone, at least with, when she was, poor Mildred seems to get kidnapped a lot, because at least when she was kidnapped in Hounded Steele, he was, Blaylock was pretty clear that this was not a social call, right? Like, his cruelty was right up front.
Yeah.
And I think it's more hurtful for Mildred to have been led on by this guy, this charming man who she genuinely thinks is interested in her, only to find out that she's being used. That's
the difference is the difference is that with Blaylock, it was frightening.
Yeah.
And because, I mean, that's a hostile situation. Yeah. So that's a very different feeling than what she has here. And you're right. I mean, this is going to be more hurtful.
Yeah.
They're both going to be traumatizing in different ways, but this one is more immediately hurtful.
Well, yeah. and will cause you, I would think, if it were me, to mistrust anybody's intentions after that, because that's just what a jerk.
Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me.
Yeah.
So anyway, when Jensen says that he merely did what he had to do, Mildred urges him to give himself up. It's not too late. She tells him about having been stuck in the nowhere job, going nowhere, and how things suddenly had changed for her. Well, Jensen has had enough of Mildred. He angrily tells her to shut up. And then he seems to regret having been harsh and having used Mildred.
I think he's conflicted here. And I think part of the reason why he didn't just take her by gunpoint is that maybe he I don't know.
Genuinely likes her.
Yeah, I was going to say not necessarily had feelings like how thick he was laying it on, but it seemed like he might have just genuinely liked her, and that's why he didn't want to pull a gun and forcibly say, "You're coming with me," which I'm not sure if that's worse. For Mildred, I mean, it might be worse.
Yeah, I'm not sure which would be worse, but he does seem to regret having used her and being harsh with her. He tells her that he's sorry if he hurt her feelings, and he tries to explain that, sometimes a man just gets caught up in events that are bigger than he is.
Yeah. And
I really think that at some level, maybe not completely, he just feels like he was in a no-win situation.
Yeah.
And had it been different, Mildred and him, they could have had, at least spent some time together and enjoyed each other's company.
Which is interesting.
Been genuine.
Because Cable is a stone cold killer. She has
Oh, yeah.
zero, like, she has no problem.
Sociopath, almost.
Yeah, she kills Carlisle, she runs over Hector, and then when she and Steele were kissing, she's pulling out that gun, fully ready to shoot him in the face. Like, she did not.
Yeah.
So it's weird to see him being the more compassionate one, but yeah, he does seem to be conflicted over it.
Well, in the meantime, Laura and Steele have been climbing over the walls, and walls that looks like they could have just simply walked around.
Yeah.
Because they're up there. They're they're doing their parkour, jumping from wall to wall,
Yeah.
working their way toward Jensen. Jensen tells Mildred that he hopes that someday he can forgive himself for what he's about to do. Well, obviously his feelings don't extend too deep because he reaches into his jacket and pulls out his gun. Mildred shouts for Steele, causing Jensen to turn around and take a shot at Steele and Laura, which we hear even before he's turned around, much less having the gun raised toward Laura and Steele. I think that somebody goofed in their sound department. Anyway, at the same time, the picnic basket, which had been out of sight and not in Mildred's hand, suddenly appears in her hand, and she swings it at Jensen, hitting his arm, throwing off his aim after the shot had been fired. Anyway, Jensen takes off running. Laura and Steele jump down from the wall of the fort and stop to chat with Mildred. Hi, how you doing? You okay? While Jensen is getting away. Mildred, who has more sense than them at the moment, tells them, well, don't just stand there talking to me. Go get the bum.
Yeah, she's mad.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Laura and Steele begin chasing Jensen, who occasionally stops to fire a shot at them. Through the fort, down a ramp, across an abandoned courtyard, and onto another portion of the fort. Jensen, who is now some distance out in front, rounds a corner of the building, out of sight, with Steele and Laura racing behind. But they stop short at the sound of a gunshot, because it isn't Jensen shooting at them. And we know that's because they're not kissing.
They haven't been kissing for a while. This is a strictly no kissing zone.
That's right. Jensen comes out from behind the corner of the building, holding his chest, blood visible on the shirt material behind his hand. He staggers a few steps, then falls, crosspiece still in his hand. Laura and Steele cautiously move forward. Steele picks up the crosspiece from Jensen's hand, only to hear, "I'll take that." It's Cable, and she has a gun pointed at Steele. Steele realizes that the crosspiece was what she was really after the entire time. She casually says that she won't say it wasn't fun, but a woman's got to have her priorities. Was there some fun that we didn't see or didn't get any hints of? Because, or was it just the part of playing with him like a cat plays with a mouse? Was that the fun part?
Yeah, I think it might have
been. I'm thinking so too, yeah. Anyway, Laura tells Cable that the fourth piece won't do her any good because the large piece she already has is a fake. Carlisle double-crossed her. What?
She's
no,
bluffing.
We know that the piece in the... Okay,
yeah.
All right.
That's what I took it to mean. I assumed that Laura was bluffing her to try to distract her, and then Jensen is the one who ends up lifting the gun. But I figured that Laura was just kind of babbling to try to stall, to try to do something, no matter, because they know the one in the historical society is fake.
Yeah. But usually they'll mention something about it being a bluff later, and they didn't. So anyway, Cable denies that it's a fake, and Laura says that if it wasn't true, then why did she kill him? Kind of a leap of logic there, but anyway, that's what she says. And as this exchange has been happening, as you mentioned, Jensen has been slowly making a last-ditch effort to pick up his fallen gun, lift it, and aim it at Cable. Steele catches the motion, hollers, and then jumps at Cable, pushing her out of the intended line of fire. Laura jumps toward Jensen, bringing her foot down on his arm, throwing off his aim and preventing him from doing much of anything else. But not to worry, that last effort was his last effort. He is dead. Laura picks up the gun. Breathlessly, Cable tells Steele that he saved her life. And Steele apologizes for that, saying accidents will happen. They're only hit and run. No, that's Elvis Costello. Sorry, never mind. Next, we see Laura and Steele. They're standing on a very large rock, surrounded on several sides by water. Steele has a compass in his hand. He points to a nearby cave and says, "There it is. Think of it, Laura. Men have searched for this spot for centuries." Laura points out that, legally speaking, the old saw, finders keepers, is unlikely to apply. Steele poo-poos her concerns for details, as he nearly always tends to do, saying that they'll sort it all out later and that they should savor the thrill of discovery and the fact that he's got pockets to put stuff in.
Yep. Yeah.
Anyway, Laura suggests that Benjamin Carlisle probably felt the same way, but look where that got him. Steele says, yes, but unlike Carlisle's feminine partner, she wouldn't murder him for his share of the treasure and then bury him behind an abandoned fortress, would she? And she, I think, only half jokingly tells him not to think that it hasn't crossed her mind at some point.
I like it.
They make their way to the cave. They search for a moment until they find that special movable rock that all caves with hidden treasures have.
Oh, but did you notice Steele tells Laura to shine the flashlight, but he doesn't say flashlight. He says shine the torch. And I don't I don't know if you noticed that, but I noticed it flew into me because it drives me crazy when my husband calls flashlights a torch, because to me a torch is that thing on wood where you light it up with the gasoline and you carry it through in the movies, but British people call flashlights torches. And so I just thought it was kind of cool that they got that small little Britishism in there when he says, Laura, shine the torch.
So anyway, they get to the rock. That's that special rock that activates a highly sophisticated mechanism buried within the rock that causes the stone walls of the cave to collapse, revealing a secret door behind which the treasure is hidden, complete with grab handle.
Yeah.
They move to...
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah. We'll talk about this. They move to the door. Steele pulls out the two pieces of the cross, holds them together, and sets them in place in the perfectly cut recess that enables them to turn the locking mechanism, which unlocks the door and enables them to open it and then enter. Once inside the room, behind the door, they look for signs of the hidden treasure that must surely be there. But instead, they find a note sitting on a small ledge and leaning against the wall. They retrieve the note and begin to read together. Well done, chaps, but too late. Signed, Sir Floyd Thursby, December 4th, 1884. And as tears begin to threaten Steele's eyes, we freeze.
I have questions on this.
Okay.
For Mr.
Go
Floyd
ahead.
Thursby, if you had found a legendary treasure that was missing for centuries, wouldn't somebody know that? Like, what did he do with it? You would think it would have been reported the treasure was found if Buddy's got the treasure. Like, he must have.
He kept a very low profile on the news. He probably...
Well, there wouldn't be any news in the 1800s.
Well, he probably lived a very, very low-key, extravagant lifestyle. You know, bought a villa somewhere and just kind of quietly slipped away. And a few years later, everybody's sitting around thinking, hey, you remember Floyd Thursby? Whatever happened to him?
Yeah, maybe. It just seems weird.
I mean, there's two possible things that you could do. You could tell everybody that you found it and then have to pay taxes on it. I don't know what the tax rate in Britain was in 1884, but if it's anything like it was today, you earn $1 million and you're still a pauper because the government takes it all. And it's like James Hilliard. I was just reading something about him and watching some videos about him, and somebody had asked him if he'd gotten rich from his books, and he said, at an 83% tax rate? You kidding?
Yeah, fair enough.
Of course, and then the other extreme is that you find it, you just kind of launder the money quietly.
Yeah.
And just, you don't raise any attention. You just kind of slip off and into the distance and enjoy your ill-gotten gains. But, I was okay with the episode up to the ending.
Where it went kind of Indiana Jones. Like, it went from...
because, I'm not going to say it was a great episode, but it was a good episode until it went Indiana Jones. Because, you think about it, and it's not just this episode, it's all those things like Indiana Jones and all those other things. For any of that stuff to happen, this special movable rock, you turn it and it causes this rock wall 40 feet away to just suddenly collapse. Okay, you're talking about, look, you've got a treasure. You're going to hide it somewhere. You find a cave. You're wanting to hide it and get out of your possession fairly quickly because you don't want to be found with it if the authorities catch up with you, or you want to be able to leave it somewhere so you can come back to it later. You don't want to spend a whole lot of time. And the treasure's been missing for 400 years. So we're talking like what, 1500s?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think they said it was circa 15 something.
Yeah. So you're on a ship, you got this treasure, you find a cave, and you just happen to have all the high-tech equipment that you need to cut out a section of rock inside the cave, build this sophisticated technological mechanism that's going to enable this rock that you're going to put back into place to hide this door that into this room that you've built, to hide the treasure. And you're going to do this all in a matter of a few days because you happen to have all the equipment that you need to do this on the ship. No, I'm sorry. This is all fantasy. I'm sorry. I mean,
but it looks cool.
It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
But it looks cool when the boulder chases Harrison Ford, so I'm fine with it.
You know, but see, that's the difference. In something like Indiana Jones, you go into it knowing that it's not going to be reality.
Yeah.
You go into a Remington Steele episode thinking that, okay, it's somewhat based on reality. It's going to kind of be, they're not going to do anything too weird or crazy. And then they do this.
I think what probably happened is that you've got this episode, and this was them shooting themselves in the foot I think a little bit for the whole season, because you had season 2 where they're clearly involved in a relationship, trying to figure out what that means, what their boundaries are, etc. And so you've got a lot of episodes where they play with that, and it's fun. That's what part of the reason why people watch the show is because of their chemistry. And then you've got the beginning of the season taking that chemistry out of the equation. Laura putting her foot down and putting the can agreement into effect, right? So, okay, that's fine. But if Mr. Steele genuinely does respect her boundaries, which it seems for the most part he's doing, with the occasional, like, maybe I should stay here tonight, that chemistry is lacking. Like, they work together. They're working together well. They're clearly still able to solve cases together, but that tension is gone because the writers have thought, oh, they got too close. We need to pull them back. Okay, but if you're going to do that, then you need to put in some extra tension somehow. Either Steele keeps pursuing her despite the can agreement or what have you. Just simply inserting random blonde of the week is not going to be enough. You need to have something more to it. So I think the problem was the episode was a little short because it lacked some of that interpersonal tension. I mean, some of it was there. It was sort of there with Laura getting jealous over Miss Cable, but by and large, it was mostly the case. Like, this was a very A-plot heavy episode, which is fine, but then you get to the end, and now we've got a couple of extra minutes to fill. Let's go treasure hunting.
Well, it's not the treasure hunt that's the problem. It's the whole Indiana Jones thing. Because, they could have just had it where, like the traditional pirate movie. X marks the spot. It's 25 paces from this rock in the cave. You make a left turn and then 10 more paces and it's buried there under a boulder.
Yeah. No,
So you move the boulder, you get out the shovels, and you dig it up. I mean, it could have been kept in the realm of believability, but yeah, Indiana Jones released May 23rd, 1984.
Yeah, they're not even, it wasn't even there yet because they're.
No, this Indiana Jones was released in May.
Months,
this episode aired in October.
Okay. Yeah, you're right. October. It would have been.
And there you go.
A couple of months afterwards. So yeah, they're definitely chasing that sort of feeling. But tonally,
first couple episodes it was Bond. Now it's Indiana Jones.
Yeah, and tonally it does sort of fall short because again, I get it. They've got this beautiful location. They want to use it. They want to play around and have fun with it. But that's the problem. You've cut them off. You've cut the characters off at the knees, in that they're not allowed to have these romantic interludes or rendezvous or whatever. They're not allowed to get shot at while they're kissing. So if you're going to legitimately have them be apart, you're missing some of that tension. That's just, yeah, it's going to be a struggle.
And yeah, It's just, I think they still could have concluded the treasure hunt in a realistic way. That's all I'm saying.
Eric's issue is the Indiana Jones plot. Mine is but I get what you're saying. I personally don't mind. I think it's fun regardless. I'm always on board for a rock that moves when it shouldn't, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, and we're really going to get back into it with season 5 because,
yeah,
even their promo photos from season 5 were very much in that same vein.
Yeah.
Anyway, well, I guess I'm done complaining.
I mean, like in terms of the case, it was a solid episode, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
It's there's nothing wrong with it per se. It's just lacking that sparkle that we've come to associate with the two of them. It's mainly focused on plot in this particular episode. So, which seems a shame because they had such a gorgeous location to work with. But it is what it is. So.
Yeah. Okay. Well, with that, we'll just remind everybody we have a website, www.SteeleWatching.com. There you will find the show notes, links to subscribe to the podcast for you and your friends if you're not already subscribing and following. Amazon links to The Third Man and The Maltese Falcon, the only 2 movie references that we had that we can justify because Follow That Bird came out afterwards. Yeah. So there you go. And then we'll have links to
maybe Indiana Jones.
But no direct reference to it. No direct reference. So anyway, so the other resources include...
We have our Instagram, Facebook fan page, and the Twitter account, as well as the officially unofficial Facebook group where we kind of gather, hang out, chat, share pictures, fan fiction, all kinds of fun stuff like that. So if you are wanting to discuss the show further, just hang out with other fans, then joining that group is a good plan. Here's my pitch.
Yes, it is. Yeah. And that's where I humiliate myself. Anyway, next episode. Next episode, we go to the ball game.
You're gonna have
second base. This should be your
episode. I'm gonna butcher this. I'm gonna mangle.
No. I will enjoy being able to just swoop down and drop in my comments.
Okay, I hope so.
It's always more fun when you lead the episode than I do because I can just.
So I'm trying to make notes on it already.
On filling in.
And I'm already like, he threw the ball and then he hit the ball and I don't know what base they're on. Like, I don't know. If it were a hockey episode, it'd be a different thing, right? Like, we don't need to put microchips in our hockey pucks in Canada, is all I'm saying. But like, yeah, baseball, I'm gonna be a little lost. So
not a problem. Not a problem.
Yeah, you'll definitely have to
correct
I'm
here
me.
For. Not a problem. Okay, well, I guess that's it. So we will see.
That's all, folks.
Next time. Bye-bye. Hey, everybody. Eric and Sara here. Just a quick announcement to let you know that, yes, we do appreciate everyone who listens, participates, and supports the podcast in whatever way you do. But we wanted to give an extra thank you to those who are so graciously giving to be monthly financial supporters.
We are making live streams of our recording sessions available to anyone who is a monthly financial supporter. So not only can you watch us live as we record our podcast episodes, you will be getting access to the raw, behind-the-scenes, unedited version of episodes before they get officially released.
And Sara, does that include our mistakes and screw-ups and our humiliating? Yes,
every
it does.
Single one of them.
Every single one of them, yes. So again, this is just an extra thank you to those who are going above and beyond. But whether you choose to become a monthly financial supporter or not, we still love you. We want to say we thank you for your support, your encouragement, and your feedback.
If you want to become a monthly financial supporter, please visit our website at www.SteeleWatching.com to sign up.